Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I'm an e-learning video evangelist here at eLearning Brothers. Today in our webinar, we'll be talking about how to implement e-learning video into a storyline course. This will include how to, what to export your video as, how to import, and then make that work in storyline. This webinar will be recorded. We'll get a copy of it sent out to everyone who has registered. We'll also post it on our website later in the week, so that you can view that at any time. If you have questions during the webinar, we'll be ready to answer those questions. So use that questions panel during the webinar to be the voice of the audience, digging through those questions and making sure that your questions are getting answered. We have Stephanie Ivick with us today.
Hello, everyone.
There you go. She'll be with us throughout the webinar to make sure that your questions get answered. Also, we have Bill Milstid, our senior developer, with us today. He's a storyline expert. You may remember him from such storyline masterpieces as Evelyn's Quest. That's now in our asset library, so check that out if you haven't. Thanks so much for joining us, Bill.
Grab me.
Just so that everyone knows, one of the things we like to do after the webinar is try to follow up as soon as possible. Sometimes just get feedback. Most of the time we want to touch base and find out if anyone needs some one-on-one clarification about our webinar topics after the fact. All right, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and move into the presentation. So I'll wait for the screen to show. Okay, so you can see here my screen. I'm showing Camtasia here. Now, Camtasia is a great software. I'm sorry, Bill, I'm going to mute your mic there for a second. Camtasia is a great software for making e-learning video. It already allows you to make interactive videos by itself if you want. It automatically exports MP4s that are great for importing online or into other software. So I'll be showing Camtasia. We also sell templates for Camtasia, so I'll show you that. And in a little while, I'll show you a little bit of Adobe Premiere and some settings that you should be aware of in Adobe Premiere. So here I've shot a video, a demonstration on how to use a grill with my old friend Taylor here. And I know that when I finish this video, I'm going to be uploading it into Storyline. And I also know that in Storyline, I'm going to be using a new style template that has been developed. Bill, what style are we going to be using?
Yeah, it's an 80s neon style. One of our new entries into the family here.
Awesome. So the 80s neon style matches pretty closely the Pulse theme for Camtasia. So this is kind of what it looks like. I'll load up one of these layouts. So it's got this cool yellow to pink neon kind of attitude. So I'm going to use that lower third on this video. I'm going to move it down a little bit right there. And I also know that the fonts the default fonts for Pulse don't match the default fonts for the style, the 80s neon. So I've gone ahead and prepared to change those. I've got the fonts downloaded, so I'll double click on eLearning Brothers and I'll change this to the correct font, Open Sans. And I'll do the same to the sub, but I'm going to go with Permanent Marker. That's the other font that they've got there. So that template is now updated and matches the style template that we're going to use. And I know that at this point, we're going to put up the half layout on top of here. And I'm going to update these as well. So I'm going to double click on this. And this time, let's make this header the permanent marker. And this lower section, the open. There we go. Also, Taylor is getting cut off a little bit by this half. So I'm going to come into my animations, add a custom animation just as it's coming in. And as it's in, we'll move the video over so that you can see Taylor better. See how that plays. I'll just use my caret keys so that you guys can see each frame. Oh, that's too early. You can see it's moving before the half comes in. So we'll move this so it doesn't start moving until the half is entering the screen. There we go. And now as it plays, oh, that's even too far. Let's move it back. right there. Then I'm going to use this awesome animation, my new favorite animation. It's called Restore. It just undoes whatever the previous animation was. So it'll help it to slide back into place as that half goes away. All right, so we now have this e-learning video. It's got the template overlays on it. It's got a lower thirds right here to introduce the topic. I would change the title, of course, to be whatever it needs to be. But I have a title and subtitle there that matches what I'm expecting to see in Storyline. And the same thing goes here. So those match pretty well. Here's the important part, exporting so that it is useful and readable by Storyline. So I'm going to export as a local file, not directly to YouTube video or screencast, but as a local file. And there's lots of options here. I've written a few blogs, you can find those on our site, that talk about what each of these does. But for our purposes right now, what we want is an MP4 only, so none of these Smart Player options. And because I want Storyline, because I want Bill to be able to have the best possible quality video he can get, and then he can change those settings in Storyline if he needs to, but I want to give him the best thing I can. So I'm going to pick this MP4 only up to 1080p. So it's going to make the video a 1080p size, and it's going to give me the frame rate that'll match my base project. So I'll export this and I'll call it for Bill, I guess. And then I'd export that. So I'm not going to export it now. I've already exported this same project and sent it over to Bill. But what that creates is an MP4 that's readable by Storyline and is in a very high quality for Bill to be able to adjust as he needs if he's interested. You can do the same thing in Premiere. I've brought in the same video. I didn't bring in the lower third asset. Those are Camtasia files. Now I could bring them in if I go to the eLearning Brothers library and download the actual assets instead of the Camtasia file, the Camtasia assets, then I can very easily build those inside of Premiere. So those assets are fairly versatile. So this is the newest version of Adobe, the Adobe Premiere Pro CC 2017. I'm going to click File, Export, and Media. Now it brings up a ton of options. It's a little more complex than the Camtasia option. But what I want to pick in here is the H.264 codec. This is going to make sure that it exports in the right format that is easily readable online by web browsers and by Storyline. Now I have a preset option to select from. Very often I do use match source high bitrate because what that does is it makes sure that there's no loss of information as I export. So for example, if I shot at 60 frames per second and I click this match source high bitrate, it'll do everything it can to preserve that frame rate, the data rate, everything that it can. All it's doing is changing the wrapper. But what I would like to do this time to make sure that it does end up being fairly usable and readable by Bill, I'm going to come down to these HD options. They've got 1080p, 1080i, 720, and 720p. So I'm going to do a 1080p, and I want it to be about 24 frames per second, so there's 23.976, and I'll select that. It also gives you a summary here. Adobe will give you a summary of what you're gonna, where it's going to be saved, what its audio rate is going to be. The audio is giving me stereo. I can come in and change my video settings here as well. If I want to make it a custom size, maybe not 1920 by 1080, I can make these adjustments here in Premiere. And then I would hit export, it would export, and then I can send that video file over to Bill. This is fairly, that's pretty much it. That's all you need to do to make sure that you're getting a high quality video ready for a tool or for your browser. The H.264 MP4 format is very readable, very versatile, and widely accepted in the authoring tools, whether they be Storyline or others, or if you want to play them online. YouTube loves these. They upload very quickly and easily. So So now I'll go ahead and pass this over to Bill, and he can show you how to import this video file into Storyline.
All right, let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, looks great.
All right, guys. So, luckily, Storyline is a super easy, helpful tool. It's got a lot of this kind of stuff built in. So most of what I'm going to show you here is just a few clicks. We've got our 80s neon style template, like Andrew mentioned. I've kind of got it set up as a mock course here with an intro, summary, and an objective screen. I want to pop his video in the middle here. In order to do that, all I have to do is click on our Insert tab up in the top, press Video and Video from File, and then locate that. So 1080p video for Storyline here. All right, Storyline will go ahead and drop that in. You can do some editing if you need to in here, but as Andrew has shown you, you should already have that taken care of. So really try to avoid using these tools as much as possible. I think if you're going to be using an external editor to publish and get everything right. Most of what you need to worry about is sizing. You can either do that, manually if you have to resize, but if you've set it up, as Andrew was mentioning, it should basically be about the right aspect ratio and ready to go for your course. Alternatively, you can use your controls up here. It's fairly self-explanatory stuff. So we'll just jump into straight up publishing because there you can control how your quality of video comes out. They've got a slider in your publish settings right there for the publish quality setting. You click that and it'll bring up a few options like we've seen since the beginning of Articulate products. Setting your video quality all the way up to 9 is going to allow Storyline to leave it alone a little bit more. That's always going to do some compression when it comes out of here. Obviously, reducing that is going to get you a lower quality video, or certainly a lower file size video. You're going to have some quality compromise that goes along with it. Press OK, press Publish, and Storyline will wrap that right up for you. Take a look at that real quick just to show you what it looks like in a published file. It does take a little bit depending on the file size. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for that to go, I'll actually mention another thing Andrew said that kind of tie into this. The settings he gave you and the way to export these MP4s, he mentioned work extremely well on YouTube. That is true, they do. Luckily, Storyline gives you the opportunity to host your videos in YouTube and insert those with one click into a project as well. So I'm going to show you that after we proof that this, in fact, did work on Publish. Which it did. Got our video there. Our lower third pops up and fits nicely into our style. And we're good to go. So back to our Storyline file. If we did, in fact, want to include that on a YouTube presentation, or rather on YouTube rather than in the Storyline file, you go through the process of uploading directly to YouTube, which is probably beyond the scope of this presentation. But then you can go and grab your embed code that YouTube will give you. Copy that and insert that video into Storyline in much the same way. Single click, video from website, paste your embed code, OK, and then you're ready to go. So right out of the box, a couple of super easy ways for you guys to get video into your course and published into whatever format you choose for your users. All right. That's what I got, Andrew. How about I pass it back over to you?
Let's leave the screen up for Storyline. Stephanie, do we have questions regarding quality or anything?
We do have a question I think that either you or Bill should be able to answer. Brian wants to know, is there a setting in Camtasia or Storyline to make videos load faster when bandwidth might be low in the field? So if someone's trying to watch a course and they're out and about, not at the office, is there a setting you can do to optimize the video to make it faster?
So Bill, do you want to take that one as far as getting a Storyline course to work better in the field, especially with the video, and then I can talk about some video settings?
Yeah, no, it's pretty fixed. You're popping a video in there. It's not, you know, checking to see what we've got going on with you know, bandwidth usage and whatnot. It's a pretty passive deal coming out of Storyline. Which, and not to step over what you might be talking about, Andrew, but it does kind of make that hosted option pretty meaningful and helpful from Storyline. So one common use case, for instance, where we have users who do use a lot of video, but they might have problems delivering them just directly off of an LMS for kind of what you're mentioning, is you know, bandwidth issues in the field. Those users may end up benefiting from a CDN or just a media server that's dedicated and kind of has that capacity built in, and then you can use Storyline, as in that second example, to insert video from a website or use a web object directly and create your own iframe and dump a video in there. So there are options, but not explicitly through Storyline itself. So yeah, how about you, Andrew?
Actually, can I jump in one sec before you answer, Andrew? Because I think what Bill is saying is going to segue really well into a few other questions we got. A lot of people want to know which you would recommend, embedding the video into Storyline or doing the hosted option with YouTube or Vimeo.
I think my answer would be purely contextual. I think that is an answer or kind of a challenge, really. It's not even so much the answer, the challenge itself. It really does come down to, I think, the concerns of your organization and your users. The biggest concern possibly being budget, right? So YouTube is a great, you know, free to low cost option for users who may need to host video, but there are also potentially organizational restrictions on domains. So sometimes in organizations, depending on size, you might not be able to use YouTube. So it's a tricky. By and large, if your videos are built well, and you're using, and they're not super long, and you know, we're not trying to draw them down on a very, very, very poor connection. It works pretty well to run videos in Storyline. You do get some lag occasionally. Storyline does preload some content, so that tends to help in some ways. Obviously, your faster, kind of surefire method is going to be web hosting, but again, there are other concerns, you know, with access associated with that. I hope that wasn't a terribly confusing answer. If it was, please let me know. Unfortunately, there's just not a clean, hey, it's this one for that one.
I think to
favorite answer. It depends.
Yeah. I think to echo what Bill is saying, as far as quality or desiring to stream your video from an external site, whether it be YouTube, Vimeo, or wherever, or to have it embedded in your video, that's going to affect the file size of your finished product. That's going to depend on your internet connection. It's going to depend on a lot of different things. You can do different things in Camtasia or in Premiere to lower bit rate, lower general quality. You know, if you export a 720 video, it's going to be considerably smaller than a 1080 video. And ultimately you're losing quality every time somewhere down the line. And you have to find that balance. So again, like he said, it depends. You have to decide at what point is my size, is my internet connectivity, how do those balance out the quality of my video? If I want that video to still be in there, can it be covered elsewhere in other ways? It's a tough question.
It definitely is. Andrew, there are some questions about what settings would you recommend for recording screencasts, such as for quick tool demos with the ultimate goal of uploading to YouTube in an Adobe Spark or Articulate Studio wrapper?
Okay, so you're recording your screen, whether to show a process of one sort or another, and are you looking for, I'm looking at the questions panel, this is from Kristen, are you looking for recording settings or export settings for those finished tools? Because if you're looking for recording settings, I would say that you should always try to record it at least 1080 as a size. and the highest quality possible, same principle. And then you can shrink it down if you need to afterwards, but you always want to record at your highest quality. I think if I understood your question correctly,
she said
then that's
thanks.
okay.
So good job.
I guess I got it.
Plus for you. We do have a couple questions for Bill about once the video is in Storyline, what are the ways, like, will the video have control buttons, and are there ways to set it to auto pause at a certain point and bring in hotspots as an overlay before the video resumes?
So let me pass this back to you, Bill, because I took the screen thinking I was going to go into the record settings and then changed my mind. So here you go.
No worries. I changed my mind many times in a given minute. So the answer to that is that there's actually a bunch of stuff. So I've got up on my screen just the embedded video that we included earlier, right? So by default, that video will have, or that slide really, will have whatever your player defaults are, okay? So in this case, when I showed it to you previewed, right, or published, you guys should have noticed there was no scrub bar on the bottom. There were buttons either previous and next, but no controls. And that's just because that's turned off for this slide. So if I go in and I adjust on the slide properties, the player features, and I enable a seek bar here, hit OK, you'll see that we've got now a seek bar. And that seek bar can be used to scrub the video, pause the video, or replay, just like a standard slide. So the other question was auto pausing the video. So that would be trigger based. Maybe before I hop into that, we'll look at what the options actually are in the video thing. So got a drop down for video volume in case you have any issues with that. Editing video, again, I would really refer back to Andrew's kind of suggestion for Camtasia or Premiere for that. You have some options for show where you show your video, either it's in slide or in a new browser window, and when you play the video. So you want to play automatically when clicked or when triggered, those being two different things. You have that as a set down in here, or as an option in this drop down. Same thing, you can create individual video controls if you do not want to use the scrub bar here. You can turn on video controls that do reside below the video, but be aware of the size of your video versus slide when you're doing that. And you also do have some control over compression here, right? So Storyline will automatically compress these files, video coming out. They also do give you the option to refrain from that, which for some users may be valuable if you need a higher quality video to come out of the course of it. You can certainly add captions. Oops, sorry guys, clicked the wrong thing here. Certainly add captions and adjust sizing through this as well. But some of the other things that Stephanie mentioned are not automatically handled through Storyline, but you certainly can do them. If you want to add, or rather, if you want to auto pause or pause at a specific timeline, triggers come in there. Now, how triggers can sometimes be tricky, so I would suggest you guys look into that if you have a mobile concern. Mostly that's not an issue with Storyline 3, but there are some instances where triggering videos can be a little funky, so just be aware. But yeah, you can go into your triggers or your drop down trigger wizard and grab the drop down here for pause media, and you can decide when that occurs, either at a timeline, which should generally work out all right, or on a cue point, or based on some sort of user interaction. It would be the similar kind of a thing for if you wanted to put a hotspot over the video. So as your video runs, so you create your own custom hotspot here. You wanted to pop up with some tips. You would place that in just like any other element in a Storyline course. Drop it over top of your video, give it your animation, add trigger to it. Let's say when the user clicks it, you want to pause that video, just like we were talking about earlier, and you want to pop a new layer that shows some info. You would just add those triggers to that object as on any other kind of standard slide. Right? Is that
Yeah, I think that answers the question, Bill. We have a couple more questions for you. One of them is, if a third-party provider has given us a link to a video housed on Wistia, how can we embed that in Storyline so that it plays as if it were native in Storyline?
That's a wonderful question. So you
Sue, congrats, you stumped Bill.
Well, it's just here's the thing. I'm a little hesitant to give you a hey, here's how you do it, because sometimes there are specifics that get tricky. Generally, okay. So if you have a link, to that file or to the video, you should be able to include it either through the insert video from website dropdown that Storyline gives you. Now that would require an embed code, I believe. Or you, depending on how that link is set up, you might be able to use just a web object to include that. Now, whether or not it's going to play natively as in Storyline, that one's potentially tricky because I think some of that may depend on what you need. So if it's got a wrapper, for instance, your Storyline's going to read that in, and it's going to obviously look like it came from an external source. If there aren't controls there, some of that gets a little tricky just because I don't know what the destination of the link is, and I feel like I could confuse this perhaps a little more. But by and large, you do have a few options to get it in there. If you have an embed code drop down or your web object, and then it might be a little potentially a little scripting, but I doubt it. I haven't really seen many instances where it's necessary beyond the web object.
All right, well, Sue says, gotcha, thank you. And maybe if she tries it, she can reach out to us and let us know how it works.
I think that's a good idea.
And we've got, let's see, one more question from Tim. I have a video in a slide, but it doesn't offer me the option of changing compression. Excuse me, changing compression to none. Only automatic is showing. How can Tim fix this?
So just making sure real quick, which version of Storyline are you on, Tim? You on 3?
Tim, what version of Storyline do you have? Oh, we're having a moment of suspense here. 360.
Oh, you're on 360. You know what? That's a great question. I don't have an answer for you off the top of my head right now. Unfortunately, I need to look at it. So let me pull it in, and that may also just be an option in 360 that I've got to go check on. So let me pull it up and come back with you. How's that sound?
Yeah, I think that is all the questions we have right now. So no pressure.
This has made me think of another bit of information. So you've mentioned that you may be given a video from a third party, whether that video is from a client through a link, or whether they give you the raw file itself and expect you to embed it and it's not working. So if you have the Adobe suite, again, there's the Adobe Media Encoder out there. And you use the same principles if you're going to run it through the Adobe Media Encoder. Just make sure you're using the H.264 codec, and then you can change your bitrate and outputs file and size and adjustments that way. But I did want to make sure that everybody's aware that you can make these changes to any video that you bring in if you've got the Media Encoder or some other rewrapping software. Just make sure you're using H.264. That's your best bet on that end. Bill, I'm not sure the timing for opening 360.
So we had one of the other attendees sent in a link to a support article from 360. Tim, is your video file in MP4? this support article here, I'll share it in the chat.
Thank you. I think that's where I was actually headed. I just popped it open,
Yes.
an MP4 in there, and I don't have an issue, so that would lead me to believe that it's probably a formatting issue more than anything. So yeah, could you fill us in then, Stephanie? I'm guessing if we've got an MOV or anything other than an MP4.
Oh, it's a Windows movie file, a WMV. Yeah, this is again more of the same. Exactly what I was saying. If you can bring it into some sort of rewrapper, whether it be Media Encoder or another software, you just need to export it with an H.264 codec and make it come out as an MP4, and all your problems will wash away.
That's actually.
And shout out to Melanie for sending us that support article.
Thank you, Melanie.
I think Angela's question is a great one. Maybe it'd just be a yes or no.
Yeah, do you want to read that one, Andrew?
Sure.
Or I
can you use cue points, triggers, other overlays as you've demonstrated on this video that we're seeing, Bill, on a video that is hosted on a different site? So if it's not embedded, can you still add those sort of cue points and triggers?
So I actually have not played with overlaying the overlaying objects into the updated versions of Storyline 3 or 360. That was actually problematic in Storyline 2 and 1, where a web object would always take precedent and overlap. So we can do that really fast though, and find out. So I'm just going to go back and grab it. All right. So if we embed from the website, I'm actually going to delete this guy. Now triggers and whatnot for controlling this video, that's going to potentially be problematic. But overlaying objects, let's check that. Okay. So let's just pop a shape and see what happens. Okay, so as far as stacking objects, that's not a problem. But in terms of controlling playback, you might have a little bit of a trickiness there. Now, so if your Storyline's not gonna do that out of the box. If you're comfortable with it, I would imagine there might be a way that you can do some custom scripting to get that to happen. But since it's being pulled in out of a web object, I would be pretty surprised if that works. So let's just double check. Yeah, so it's not going to give us that option. That may limit what you can do time-wise and obviously interaction-wise. So yeah, I would say that it might be worth looking into any controls for external videos if you have them. I guess on a source other than YouTube. For controlling it on something like YouTube, I would say that that's probably going to be beyond the scope of most uses or most folks. Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking out loud there. Does that answer your question there, guys?
I think that does. Thank you. It looks like we've gotten pretty much all the questions. Lots of thanks to both of you for answering all the questions and having so many good ideas.
Excellent. Sorry, I was reading that Tim rewrapped his video in H.264 and it worked, so I'm stoked. That's great. I hope that continues to work for you. I'm going to take back the screen here for a second and share this this little slide. So as you guys may know, we've got eLearning Brothers, the ELBX conference coming up this June. We'd love for you guys to come in and say hi, come visit us. Bill, are you coming to ELBX this year?
I am.
So yeah, come and meet Bill. Come and talk with Bill. We'll all be there. It's going to be a great conference. We've got tons of stuff put together for you. It'll be exciting. So learn more at eLearningBrothers.com. Also, if you want to see these new styles, Bill kind of showed you the 80s neon. If you want to see those styles, go to eLearningBrothers.com and you can dig around in there. You can also go to library.eLearningBrothers.com and see some of the new stuff that we're putting in there. If you want to see a demo, get some of these in action, give us a call, 801-796-2767. You can also send an email to info@elearningbrothers.com. I hope it's been super useful for everybody and that you've been able to get what you wanted from this webinar. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. This has been great. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks.